The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a metal ocean. Thousands of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose up toward the domed ceiling. Their voices created a storm of clicks, hisses, and electronic sounds. In the center of it all, Ambassador Hyunsu stood alone at the human podium. He looked small compared to the massive creatures around him. The Valtharian representatives towered over everyone with their gray skin and 4 arms. The Korthak delegates moved together like parts of one mind, their insect-like heads turning in perfect sync. The Zephyrite glowed with inner light, their crystal bodies casting rainbow shadows. The Nereid ambassadors floated in their water tanks, their tentacles waving slowly. Hyunsu had given this same speech many times in his head. He had practiced the words until they felt like stones in his mouth. Now, as the noise died down, he spoke clearly into the silence. For 50 years, humanity has served this council, he began. His voice carried through the hall without strain. We have stopped wars before they started. We have solved problems that seemed impossible. We have built bridges between species that hated each other for thousands of years. Chairman Drakthul, the largest Valtharian, leaned forward in his massive chair. His 4 arms crossed over his chest. The human speaks of service, but we see only interference, his voice boomed. Your species creates chaos wherever it goes. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Hyunsu had heard these words before, but they still stung. He thought about all the human engineers who had worked without sleep to fix alien machinery. He remembered the human doctors who had found cures for diseases that were killing entire worlds. He pictured the human teachers who had helped young aliens learn to live together in peace. We offer partnership, Hyunsu continued, his voice steady. We share our knowledge freely. We ask only to be treated as equals. A Zephyrite named Kixandra pulsed with angry red light. Equals? You have existed for mere moments compared to our ancient civilizations. Your technology is primitive. Your lifespans are pathetic. What could you possibly teach us? The hall erupted in sounds of approval. Clicking from the Korthak, electronic pulses from the Zephyrite, deep rumbles from the Valtharians, splash, sounds from the Nereid tanks. Hyunsu waited for quiet again. On Earth, his wife Mi-young was probably putting their daughter to bed. She would be reading one of those old books about brave explorers who sailed unknown seas. Soon, he thought, humans would be explorers again, not by choice but by necessity. The motion before us today is clear, Drakthul announced. Should humanity be expelled from the Galactic Council for the crime of destabilizing galactic civilization? Voting began. Each species announced their decision with ceremonial words. The Valtharians voted to expel with military precision. The Korthak spoke as one voice demanding removal. The Zephyrite pulsed their rejection of humanity in bright colors. The Nereids bubbled their agreement to cast humans out. 847 voices voted to expel humanity from the council. Only one voice voted against the motion. Hyunsu's voice, speaking for all of humanity. The vote is final, Drakthul declared. Humanity has 72 standard hours to remove all personnel, equipment, and installations from council space. Any human presence after this deadline will be considered an act of aggression. Hyunsu stood in the sudden silence. He had expected this result, but it still felt like a physical blow. Around the hall, alien faces showed satisfaction, relief, even joy. They thought they had solved their problems by removing the troublesome humans. Very well, Hyunsu said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. We came to you offering friendship. You chose fear. We offered our knowledge. You chose ignorance. We offered our hands to help. You chose to push us away. He paused, looking around the hall one last time. These beings had made their choice. Now humanity would make theirs. We will leave your space as requested. We will take our people, our ships, and our knowledge. But remember this moment. Remember that we offered to stand with you, and you chose to stand alone. The alien representatives shifted uncomfortably. Something in Hyunsu's tone made them uneasy, though they could not say why. We will not beg for your acceptance where none exists. Yunsu continued. We will not force our help on those who reject it. You have made your decision, live with it. He gathered his papers and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the quiet hall. No one spoke until the doors closed behind him. Within hours, the messages began flowing through human communication networks. Every human colony, every research station, every trading post received the same orders. Pack everything. Leave nothing behind. Come home. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, engineer Jin Woo shut down the fusion reactors that had powered the Veltharian extraction operations for 20 years. He deleted the maintenance schedules from the computers and packed his tools. The alien workers watched in confusion as systems they did not understand went dark. Dr. Sora closed her research lab on the Zephyrite homeworld. She had been working on a cure for the plague that struck young Zephyrites every few years. Her research was nearly complete. She deleted all her files and took her samples with her. The Zephyrite administrators did not even notice her leaving. Captain Taman ordered the human fleet to begin withdrawal from Council space. Merchant ships stopped their trade routes. Military vessels abandoned their patrol areas. Hospital ships picked up human medical staff from alien worlds. Not one human would remain when the deadline passed. The aliens noticed the departures but felt only relief. No more human interference in their affairs. No more strange human ideas about cooperation and compromise. They could return to the old ways when each species knew its place. But some of the older aliens felt uneasy. They remembered the time before humans joined the Council. Those had not been peaceful times. Wars had lasted for centuries. Simple problems had grown into massive conflicts. Entire species had gone extinct because no one could find solutions to their difficulties. As the 72nd hour approached, the last human ship left Council space. It carried Ambassador Hyun-soo back to Earth. He stood at the observation window, watching the stars that had been humanity's second home disappear behind them. The aliens had gotten what they wanted. The galaxy belonged to them again. They would soon learn what that truly meant. 6 months had passed since the humans left. Chairman Drakthol stood in his command center staring at the reports flooding in from across Veltharian space. Red warning lights flashed on screen after screen. His forearms moved quickly, trying to sort through the chaos. The mining station on Azarian Prime had gone dark 3 days ago. The fusion reactors that powered the entire operation had shut down without warning. The Veltharian engineers could not figure out how to restart them. They pressed buttons and adjusted controls, but nothing worked. The reactors remained cold and silent. "Where is Jin Woo?" demanded General Velthar, bursting into the command center. His gray skin was darker than usual, a sign of extreme stress. "We need the human engineer. The mining equipment is failing across 12 systems." Drakthol's mandibles clicked in irritation. "The humans are gone, General. We expelled them, remember? We decided we did not need their primitive help. But the reactors," Velthar began, "are our responsibility now." Drakthol cut him off. "We built this empire without humans for thousands of years. We can maintain it without them now." But the problems kept growing. The Zephyrite homeworld was facing a different crisis. Young Zephyrites were falling ill with the same plague that struck every few years. In the past, Dr. Sora had worked on treatments that kept the death rate low. Now, with no human scientist to continue the research, the plague spread unchecked. Kixandra pulsed with worried yellow light as she read the casualty reports. Hundreds of young Zephyrites had already died. The number was climbing every day. She had tried to contact the human research stations, but the communication channels were empty. The humans had taken all their knowledge with them. The Korthak Collective was having problems of their own. Their hive mind depended on complex neural networks that linked every member of their species. Human technicians had maintained these networks for decades, making small adjustments that kept the connection stable. Without this maintenance, the networks were breaking down. Hive Queen Zek felt the chaos spreading through her people's shared consciousness. Individual Korthak were beginning to think independent thoughts. Some were questioning orders, others were refusing to work. The perfect unity that had defined their species for millennia was cracking apart. "We must contact the humans," she declared, to her advisors. But when they tried to send messages, they received only automated responses. The humans were not accepting communications from council members. The Nereids faced their own disasters. Their underwater cities depended on life support, systems that humans had designed and installed. The systems were failing one by one, and Nereid engineers could not understand the complex technology. Water pressure was building in the outer sections. If the barriers collapsed, millions would drown. Captain Mordun swam desperately through the flooded corridors of New Atlantica, trying to reach the control center. The water was rising faster than his people could pump it out. He needed human engineers, but they were gone. The barriers that protected his city had been built by human hands, and only human knowledge could save them now. As the months passed, the problems grew worse. The trade routes that connected the galaxy began to fail. Human merchants had optimized these routes over decades, finding the safest and fastest paths between worlds. Without them, cargo ships got lost in space. Some never reached their destinations. Food shortages began on worlds that depended on imports. Medical supplies ran low on planets that could not produce their own. The careful balance that had kept the galaxy fed and healthy was breaking down. Diplomatic disputes that had been quiet for years suddenly flared back to life. The Valtharians and Zephyrite began arguing over mining rights in the Nebula sector. In the past, human mediators would have found a compromise that satisfied both sides. Now, the argument grew into threats of war. "We claim that system first," Drakthol roared at the council meeting. "Our ancestors died fighting for those worlds." "Your ancestors were barbarians," Kixandra pulsed angrily. "We have evidence of prior settlement that predates your species by 10,000 years. The argument went in circles. Neither side would give ground. Other council members took sides based on old alliances and ancient grudges. The careful diplomacy that humans had practiced was replaced by threats and name-calling. But the worst problems were the ones nobody saw coming. On the EY edge of Korthak space, pirates began attacking merchant ships. In the past, human patrol vessels had kept the shipping lanes safe. Now the pirates moved freely, stealing cargo and destroying ships. Strange diseases began spreading on worlds where humans had once provided medical care. Without human doctors to track the illnesses and develop treatments, the diseases mutated and grew stronger. Entire colonies were wiped out by plagues that could have been stopped. The communication networks that connected the galaxy began to break down. Human technicians had maintained the relay stations and quantum transmitters that carried messages between worlds. Without their expertise, the networks failed piece by piece. Worlds that had been in constant contact for centuries suddenly found themselves alone in the dark. Some of the older aliens began to remember what life had been like before humans joined the council. They remembered the wars that lasted for generations. They recalled the famines when trade routes failed. They thought about the plagues that had killed billions because no one knew how to stop them. But when they tried to speak up, the younger aliens shouted them down. "We are better off without the humans," they insisted. "These problems are temporary. We will solve them ourselves." Drakthol still believed this was true. He refused to admit that humanity had been important. Every time someone suggested contacting the humans, he reminded them of the vote. "We decided they were a threat to galactic stability," he would say. "We were right to expel them." Yet late at night, when he was alone in his quarters, Drakthol sometimes wondered where the humans had gone. The galaxy seemed so much larger and darker without them. Problems that had once seemed simple now felt impossible to solve. The confidence he had felt 6 months ago was fading, replaced by a growing fear that maybe, just maybe, the council had made a terrible mistake. But pride is a powerful thing, and Drakthol was not ready to admit he had been wrong. Not yet. The galaxy would have to burn a little more before he would swallow his pride and seek help from the species he had cast out in disgrace. Admiral Dong Hyun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable Spirit, watching the star charts update in real time. His ship floated in dark space, far beyond the borders of what used to be called Council territory. From here, he could monitor everything happening in the galaxy without being detected. The news was bad. Worse than bad, the galaxy was tearing itself apart. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Yunji from her station. "I'm picking up distress signals from 17 different systems. The Korthak Collective is reporting complete neural network breakdown in the outer rim sectors." Donghyun nodded grimly. He had expected this. The neural stabilizers that kept the Korthak hive mind functioning required constant adjustment. Human technicians had been making those adjustments for 30 years. Without them, the network was like a radio slowly losing its signal. "What about the Valtharian Empire?" he asked. "Collapsing," reported Commander Young-ho from the intelligence station. "Their military equipment is failing across all fronts. The fusion reactors that Jinwoo maintained are shutting down one by one. They've lost power to half their fleet." Through the main view screen, Donghyun could see distant flashes of light. Those were explosions, he knew. Ships destroying each other in battles that no one could stop. The galaxy that humans had helped keep peaceful for 50 years was returning to its natural state of chaos. The cascade had begun exactly as Earth's strategists had predicted. When you remove a keystone from an arch, the whole structure falls down. Humans had been the keystone of galactic civilization, though none of the aliens had realized it until too late. "Sir," Yunji said, her voice tense, "I'm detecting massive energy surges in Zephyrite space. Their crystalline matrices are overloading." Donghyun closed his eyes. He had helped Dr. Yunji develop the calibration protocols that kept Zephyrite energy systems stable. The protocols had to be updated every few months as the crystals grew and changed. Without those updates, the energy matrices would eventually explode like miniature stars. "How many Zephyrite worlds are affected?" he asked. "All of them, sir. The cascade is spreading through their entire network." The communication station crackled to life. Captain Haewon's voice came through clearly from the reconnaissance ship Silent Observer. "Admiral, we're observing complete breakdown in the former Council core systems. The Nereids have lost 3 major cities to flooding. Their life support systems are failing faster than they can repair them." "Any word from the Council itself?" Donghyun asked. "They've been trying to contact us." "For weeks, sir. Emergency channels, diplomatic frequencies, even old human commercial networks, they're getting desperate." Donghyun looked at the tactical display showing the galaxy. Red zones marked areas of conflict. Yellow zones showed system failures. Green zones showed stable areas. There was very little green left. The worst part was watching it all happen exactly as predicted. Human analysts had run simulations for years, calculating what would occur if humanity was suddenly removed from galactic affairs. The aliens had dismissed these simulations as arrogant human fear-mongering. Now the predictions were coming true, with terrifying accuracy. "Admiral," Young-ho called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the edge of Council space. It's Chairman Drakthol himself." The bridge fell silent. Donghyun had known this moment would come, but it still felt surreal. The proud Valtharian leader who had led the vote to expel humanity was now trying to call them back. "Put it through," Donghyun ordered. The main screen flickered, showing the interior of a damaged Valtharian command ship. Drakthul appeared, but he looked nothing like the confident leader who had banished humanity a year ago. His gray skin was pale and scarred. 2 of his 4 arms hung uselessly at his sides, apparently injured in some battle. His eyes held a desperate fear that Donghyun had never seen before. "Human Admiral," Drakthol began, his voice shaking. The Council formally requests immediate assistance. Our civilizations are collapsing. Billions are dying. We need your help." The words seemed to cause him physical pain. This was a being who had never asked for help from anyone, especially not from the species he had considered inferior. "The communication protocols were clear when you expelled us," Donghyun replied calmly. "The United Human Systems is no longer accepting communications from former Council entities." "Please," Drakthul continued, and that single word carried more desperation than Donghyun had thought possible. "We were wrong. I was wrong. We see that now. Humanity is essential to galactic stability. Without you, we are nothing but savages destroying ourselves. Young Ho looked at Dong Hyun questioningly. The admiral held up a hand for silence. Your species voted 847 to 1 that humanity was a destabilizing influence on galactic civilization, Dong Hyun said. You declared that our presence was a threat to your ancient ways. Has something changed your mind? Behind Drakthul, explosions lit up the screen as his ship came under attack. The Valtharian leader barely seemed to notice. He was focused entirely on the human admiral who might be his only hope of salvation. Everything has changed, Drakthul said. We understand now what we lost when we cast you out. The galaxy is dying without human wisdom. Our people are dying without human knowledge. Our civilization is crumbling without human innovation. And what makes you think we would return? Dong Hyun asked. The question hung in the air as more explosions rocked Drakthul's ship. The proud chairman who had once commanded fleets across the galaxy was now begging for help from the species he had exiled. Because, Drakthul said slowly, you are better than we are. You always were. We just refused to see it. The transmission cut out as Drakthul's ship was destroyed by enemy fire. Dong Hyun stared at the empty screen for a long moment. Around him, the bridge crew waited in silence. Set course for Earth, Dong Hyun finally ordered. It's time to let the president know that the galaxy is ready to discuss terms. As the indomitable spirit turned toward human space, the galaxy continued its slide into chaos. But for the first time in months, there was a possibility of hope. Not salvation, that would come at a price, but hope that the darkness might eventually end. The question now was whether humanity would choose mercy or justice, and whether the galaxy would survive long enough to find out. President Minho sat in his office aboard New Geneva Station, reading the reconnaissance reports that painted a picture of galactic apocalypse. Through the massive viewports, he could see the new human colonies stretching across the star field. These worlds, built in the 18 months since the Exodus, represented humanity's fresh start beyond the rim of Council space. Captain Haiwan had returned from her latest mission with footage that was hard to watch. Her ship, the Silent Observer, had documented the complete collapse of what had once been the greatest civilization in galactic history. Show me the Valtharian sectors again, Minho requested. The holographic display lit up, showing the former heart of the Valtharian Empire. Where once mighty fleets had patrolled space lanes, now only wreckage floated in the darkness. Worlds that had thrived for millennia were dark and silent. The proud gray-skinned warriors who had considered themselves the galaxy's natural leaders were scattered refugees fleeing their own collapsing territories. The death toll? Minho asked quietly. Conservative estimates put it at 12 billion across all species, Haiwan replied. Her face was grim. That's just in the last 6 months. The cascade failures are accelerating. Minho had seen the reports. The Korthak Collective's hive mind had fractured completely, leaving billions of insect-like beings unable to function in their suddenly individual existence. Many had simply stopped eating, unable to comprehend life without the shared consciousness that had defined their species. The Zephyrite energy matrices had begun exploding just as Dr. Yunji had predicted. Entire crystal cities had been vaporized, in chain reactions that lit up half the galaxy. The survivors wandered their shattered worlds like lost children, their inner light dim with grief and confusion. The Nereid underwater cities had flooded one after another as the human-designed life support systems failed. Captain Morden had managed to evacuate a few million of his people to surface installations, but hundreds of millions had drowned in the depths of their home oceans. Any direct communications from the survivors? Minho asked. Daily, Haiwan confirmed. Thousands of messages, all begging for help, all asking us to return and save what's left of their civilizations. Minho nodded. He had read many of those messages himself. The pride and arrogance that had driven humanity's expulsion had been replaced by desperate humility, but some wounds cut too deep for simple apologies to heal. And the ones responsible for our exile? Haiwan touched her tablet, bringing up new images. Drakthul died when his command ship was destroyed by Nereid rebels 3 days ago. Most of the original council leadership is gone, The few survivors have, she paused, searching for the right words, drastically changed their positions on human involvement. The door to Minho's office chimed. "Come in," he called. Ambassador Sun He entered, carrying a datapad with the latest diplomatic reports. As humanity's new chief negotiator, she had been monitoring alien communications since the Exodus began. "Mr. President," she began, "we've received something different this time. Not just another plea for help, but an actual delegation request. The surviving council members want to meet with us face to face." Minho raised an eyebrow. "Here? In human space?" "Yes, sir. They're requesting permission to approach New Harmony. They say they want to surrender." The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Surrender. Not negotiation, not compromise, but complete capitulation. The aliens who had expelled humanity as primitive troublemakers now wanted to surrender to them. "How many are coming?" Minho asked. "All of them," Sun He replied. "Every surviving council member from every species. They're traveling in whatever ships they have left. Most are damaged refugee vessels, not the grand diplomatic cruisers they used to favor." Minho walked to the viewport, looking out at the thriving human colonies. In 18 months, humanity had built more than they had accomplished in decades within council space. Free from alien bureaucracy and condescension, human innovation had exploded. New technologies, new colonies, new trade networks with species. Beyond the galactic rim who welcomed human partnership. "Dr. Wu Jin's medical teams are ready?" he asked. Sun He nodded. "Standing by with vaccines, medical supplies, and emergency treatment protocols. If we decide to help, we can save millions of lives within the first week. And if we decide not to help, complete extinction of council species within 6 months," Sun He said without emotion. "The Cascade failures have passed the point of no return. They can't solve this themselves. They lack the knowledge, the resources, and the infrastructure. They need us or they die." Minho considered this. The logical part of his mind recognized the opportunity. Humanity could return to the galaxy not as junior partners or tolerated inferiors, but as the dominant species. They could dictate terms, reshape galactic civilization, and ensure that humans would never again be dismissed or expelled. The emotional part of his mind remembered the humiliation of the Exodus. He thought about the human families who had died during the hasty withdrawal when life support systems failed on evacuation ships. He remembered the human children who had been bullied by alien classmates and told that their species was primitive and worthless. "What do our advisors recommend?" he asked. "Mixed opinions," Sun He admitted. "The military wants strategic concessions and permanent bases throughout the galaxy. The scientists want access to all alien research and technology. The economists want exclusive trading rights and resource guarantees. And the moral philosophers?" Sun He smiled slightly. "They say that mercy is what separates us from our enemies. That showing compassion when we have the power to exact revenge is what makes us worthy of the galaxy's trust." Minho turned back to his desk, where a photo showed him with his wife and young son. The boy had been born after the Exodus, in human space. He would grow up in a galaxy where humans were respected, not tolerated. Grant them permission to approach, he decided, but make the terms clear. They come as supplicants, not negotiators. They accept our conditions or they return to their dying worlds with nothing. "What conditions, sir?" Minho looked out at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, billions of alien beings were dying because their leaders had been too proud to value human contributions. The galaxy was learning the true cost of arrogance. Complete restructuring of galactic governance with human oversight. Reparations for the Exodus and the lives lost during withdrawal. Public acknowledgement that human civilization is not primitive or inferior. Guaranteed human authority in all interspecies disputes. He paused. "And one more thing. Sir? They will publicly apologize. Not just to our government, but to every human family affected by the exile, to every human child who was told they were worthless, to every human who died because of their pride." Sun He nodded, making notes on her pad. "And in exchange? We save them," Minho said simply, "because that's who we are." As Sun He left to prepare for the alien delegation, Minho remained at the viewport. Tomorrow would bring the most important negotiation in galactic history. The aliens would come begging for salvation from the species they had cast out, and humanity would have to decide whether to offer mercy or justice. Perhaps, Minho thought, they could offer both. The alien fleet appeared on the edge of human space like a collection of broken toys. Ambassador Sun He watched through the observation deck of New Harmony Station as the survivors of galactic civilization limped toward humanity's new capital, world. These were not the grand diplomatic vessels that had once carried alien ambassadors to council meetings. The Valtharian ships were scarred by battle damage, their hulls patched with whatever materials the refugees could find. The remaining Korthak vessels moved in chaotic patterns, their crews no longer able to coordinate through their broken hive mind. The few Zephyrite ships flickered weakly, their crystal hulls cracked and dim. The Nereid vessels leaked water into space, leaving glittering trails of ice crystals behind them. 15 ships total, reported Captain Jiwan from the human escort fleet. Carrying maybe 2,000 survivors, that's all that's left of their leadership. Sun He felt a mixture of pity and satisfaction. 2 years ago, these same beings had commanded fleets of millions. They had ruled over hundreds of worlds and billions of subjects. They had looked down on humanity as primitive children who needed to be expelled for the good of galactic civilization. Now they came as beggars. "Patch me through to their lead ship," Sun He ordered. The communication screen flickered to life, showing the interior of a damaged Valtharian vessel. But instead of Drakthul, who had died in the fighting, a much smaller figure appeared. It was a young Valtharian female named Kesara, one of the few surviving members of their High Council. "Ambassador Sun He," Kesara said, her voice barely above a whisper. We thank you for allowing us to approach human space. We know we have no right to ask for your help after what we did to your people." "You're correct," Sun He replied coldly. "You have no right, but we will listen to what you have to say." Behind Kesara, Sun He could see other alien survivors. Kixandra was there, her crystal form dim and cracked, barely glowing with enough energy to maintain life. A few Korthak drones huddled together, their individual minds still struggling to function without the collective consciousness they had known all their lives. Several Nereid officers floated in portable water tanks, their tentacles moving listlessly. "We surrender," Kesara said simply. "Completely and without condition. We place what remains of our civilizations under human authority. We beg you to save our people from the destruction we brought upon ourselves." Sun He had expected this, but hearing it still sent a chill through her. The species that had expelled humanity for being too chaotic and unpredictable were now surrendering their independence to human rule. "President Minho will see you on New Harmony," Sun He informed them. "Your ships will be escorted to landing bays. You will be disarmed and confined until the negotiations are complete. Do you accept these terms?" "We accept anything you demand," Kesara replied. An hour later, the alien survivors stood in the Great Hall of New Harmony's government complex. The room was designed to echo the old council chambers, but with human aesthetics. Instead of towering, alien architecture meant to intimidate. The space felt welcoming while still impressive. President Minho entered with his full diplomatic team. Dr. Wu Jin was there, ready to coordinate medical relief if an agreement was reached. Admiral Dong Hyun represented the military perspective. Dr. Namjoon led the humanitarian assistance teams that could begin saving alien lives immediately. The aliens looked tiny and broken in the vast human space. Their once proud species had been reduced to a handful of desperate survivors. They stood together not out of unity, but out of shared defeat. "You asked to surrender," Minho began without ceremony. "Tell me what that means." Kesara spoke for the group, though her voice shook with each word. "We acknowledge that human contributions were essential to galactic civilization. We acknowledge that our expulsion of humanity was motivated by pride, fear, and ignorance. We acknowledge that the collapse of our civilizations is the direct result of our own actions." She paused, struggling to continue. "We formally apologize to every human family affected by the Exodus. We apologize to every human child who was taught that their species was inferior. We apologize to every human who died because of our prejudice and arrogance." The words hung in the air. Sun-Hee watched the alien faces as they absorbed the magnitude of what they had just admitted. They were not just surrendering their governments, they were surrendering their pride. "In exchange for what?" Minho asked. "We ask for nothing." Kixandra pulsed weakly. "We have no right to ask. We only hope that human mercy might save what remains of our peoples." Minho looked at each alien survivor in turn. These beings had once commanded the galaxy. They had dismissed humanity as primitive troublemakers. They had voted almost unanimously to cast humans out of galactic civilization. Now they stood before him like children, hoping for forgiveness they knew they did not deserve. "Dr. Wu Jin," Minho said, "how quickly can we begin relief operations?" The doctor stepped forward with his datapad. "Medical teams can begin work immediately. We have vaccines for the plagues affecting surviving Zephyrite populations. Emergency life support systems can be deployed to failing Nereid cities within 48 hours. Neural stabilizers for the Korthak can be distributed within a week." "Dr. Namjoon, what about longer-term reconstruction?" "Engineering teams are standing by," Namjoon reported. "We can begin repairing critical infrastructure immediately. Power systems, communication networks, food distribution. We can have basic services restored to refugee populations within a month." Minho nodded slowly. Around him, his advisors waited to see what decision humanity would make. They could exact revenge for the years of condescension and the humiliation of exile. They could demand tribute and subjugation from the species that had cast them out. They could reshape the galaxy according to human will. Or they could choose a different path. "Here are humanity's terms," Minho announced. "Complete restructuring of galactic governance under human leadership. Public acknowledgement of humanity's essential role in galactic civilization. Reparations for the exodus and lives lost during withdrawal. Human oversight of all interspecies conflicts going forward." The aliens nodded eagerly, accepting each demand without question. "In exchange," Minho continued, "humanity will begin immediate relief operations. We will save your people, rebuild your civilizations, and restore order to the galaxy. Not because we have to, but because mercy costs us nothing to give freely." Kesara collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her gray face. Around her, the other survivors showed their own species' expressions of overwhelming relief and gratitude. "But remember this," Minho added, his voice carrying across the silent hall. "We left without a word, because words had lost their meaning. To you, we return with action because mercy speaks louder than pride." Within hours, human relief ships were launching toward the devastated galaxy. Medical teams carried vaccines and emergency supplies. Engineers brought repair equipment and technical expertise. Teachers prepared to help alien children learn to live in the new galactic order. The galaxy that had expelled humanity for being too chaotic and unpredictable was about to learn what human chaos could accomplish when directed toward healing rather than harm. The species that had dismissed human cooperation as primitive interference were about to discover what human organization could achieve when given proper authority. As Sun-Hee watched the first relief ships disappear into hyperspace, she smiled. The aliens had gotten exactly what they asked for when they expelled humanity, a galaxy without human interference. They had learned what that really meant. Now they would learn what human help could accomplish when it was given freely, backed by authority, and guided by the hard-won wisdom of a species that understood both justice and mercy. The galaxy belonged to humanity now, not through conquest, but through the simple recognition that some gifts are too valuable to be rejected. Twice.